Champions on the track, bitter rivals off it. For Chris and Nickie, competition is everything. Greetings, schools, and welcome to a dive into horror television. Tonight we explore Killer Instinct from Freddy's Nightmares. Chris and Nickie are sprinting in a race when Chris hears her dead mom cheering her on. She still loses the race. In the locker room, Coach is disappointed in Chris's performance and cuts her from the team, even though she was friends with Chris's mom. Brutal. Chris meets with their boyfriend, who tries to talk some sense into her. Chris takes things really hard. She's got to learn how to relax and give herself some grace during this dark chapter in her life. The next day, Chris tells her coach that she's ready to win. Coach gives her a good luck charm that her mom used to have. If she gazes into the crystal and pictures herself winning, she just might win. Well, it worked for her mom at least. So she gives it a go. She goes for a run and she's speedy. Later on, she goes to lunch and there's a creepy lunch man who touches Chris's hand when he gives her a sandwich. She didn't like that one bit. She looks into her crystal and only a moment later, he's cutting his fingers off in the meat slicer. Blood splatters all over Chris. David is watching Chris run laps when Nickie comes over and flirts with him. She touches his leg and it's very unbecoming of her to want her rival's boyfriend. She tells him no one has to know. Nickie has a boyfriend too, but we learn she won't put out until after the finals. While she's in training, there's a hands-off policy. David thinks he's getting ripped off. So Chris sprints and she goes fast as lightning, shaving off a good minute from her last attempt. The lucky charm is working. During class, Chris is so excited that she set a new record that she's gabbing over the teacher's lecture. Chris looks into her lucky charm, and then a second later, the teacher starts choking. Cotton balls come shooting out of his throat. He chokes to death in front of everyone. Later, we learn that Chris wished for that to happen right before. She tries explaining to David what's happening, but he doesn't believe her. Nickie approaches Chris and tells her the reason her mom stopped running was because she got knocked up with Chris. So what does Chris do? She thinks about hurting Nickie and gazes into her crystal. Nickie's treadmill goes so fast and she can't stop it. The next day it's time for a race. Chris is devastated that she lost her crystal. She has to go out there and win the race without her crutch. Can she do it? Nickie says whoever wins the race will get the trophy and David. She's a homewrecker. So the race starts and they both keep up pace with each other. At the finish line, something horrible happens. Chris runs neck first into the finish line and her head goes flying in the air. She's decapitated. The whole team rushes over to see if Chris is okay. She still has her head, but it looks like she broke her neck. Back in the locker room, we see that Nickie stole her good luck charm and used it against Chris. What comes around goes around. That evening, Chris visits David as an angel. She begs him to get Nickie back for what she did to her. At Chris's funeral, David is appalled to see Nickie in attendance. At Chris's grave, a hand pops out and grabs a rose. David goes to Chris's gym locker to clear it out. Nickie is there to make matters worse. She says everyone they grew up with is gone. He doesn't want anything to do with her. At karate practice, David is paired up with Jay, Nickie's boyfriend. David says, "You killed my girlfriend, I'll kill your boyfriend," and then punches a hole right through him. Nickie is stunned. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happens at Springwood High. We come back from commercial break and Jay is still alive. She's having visions of horrifying scenes. Jay promises to keep her safe. She finds comfort in her boyfriend for a change. Nickie won't catch the hint that David loathes her, so she invites him over to her house to talk. Why can't she talk to her boyfriend and leave David alone? I don't know. Nickie goes home and there's an important lady at dinner who wants to help her with college applications. Nickie is terrified because she sees Chris at the table. She goes into the bedroom and all of her trophies start disappearing. Chris comes through the mirror and grabs her by her throat. Nickie's dad comes into her room and accuses her of being on drugs, and she's speechless. That night she's visited by Chris again. Chris's face is ghastly. Her body's starting to decompose. At breakfast, we learn that her parents pushed her too far. She sees Chris at the table and loses it. She runs like a nut at the school gym to take the edge off. Her coach offers to drive her to a doctor, but she refuses. Nickie walks home alone, but of course, she runs into Chris along the way. She collapses in bed after a long day of freakouts. Her bedroom window swings open and it's David. He's there for revenge. He picks up a trophy and says Chris should have won it, and she takes it and starts beating him over the head with it. she mercilessly kills David. This story is a stark exploration of the corrupting nature of power and the loss of personal accountability. The good luck charm is not a tool for achievement, but a conduit for raw, unfiltered id, transforming frustration and competitive anxiety into lethal reality. Chris's initial use of it, accidentally causing horrific deaths, reveals how easily the desire for success can mutate into a willingness to harm others when given a consequence-free weapon. Her journey shows that power without ethics is inherently corrupting. She doesn't choose to become a murderer so much as she casually wishes her annoyances away, and the crystal obliges, absolving her of the moral weight of her thoughts. This creates a chilling parable between athletic ambition and supernatural revenge, both demanding the elimination of obstacles by any means necessary. A deeper, more tragic theme is the cyclical nature of trauma and the burden of maternal legacy. Chris is haunted not by her mother's ghost, but by the unattainable standard of her mother's past success and the secret shame that ended it. The coach passes the crystal to Chris, not as a gift, but as a baton in a cursed relay race of expectations. Nickie's cruel revelation that Chris's existence was the reason her mother stopped running instantly reframes Chris's entire drive. Her running is no longer just for herself, it's a desperate attempt to rectify a perceived historical mistake, to win the trophies her mother gave up for her. This immeasurable pressure makes her vulnerable to the crystal's power, creating a cycle where the mother's unfinished business literally destroys the daughter. Ultimately, the episode descends into a self-perpetuating cycle of vengeance that consumes everyone it touches. The initial corruption sets off a chain reaction of blame and retribution that obliterates the community. Chris's death transforms her from a corrupt user of power into a vengeful spirit, continuing the cycle from beyond the grave. Nickie, who stole the corrupting power, becomes its final victim, paranoid, isolated, and ultimately transformed into a killer herself when she bludgeons David. There are no winners, only successive layers of perpetrators and victims. The final image of Nickie alone and covered in blood underscores the core horror. The pursuit of victory, whether in sport, love, or revenge, creates a vortex that annihilates all participants, leaving only trauma and trophies stained with blood. The real race was never for a finish line, but for survival in a game where everyone was already disqualified. Chris's grief is not treated as something to be mourned or processed, it is treated as a defect in output. Her mother's death registers only insofar as it affects her race times. The coach's disappointment is especially brutal because of her past friendship with Chris's mother. Sentimentality offers no exemption from performance metrics. This reflects a broader social logic. Grief is tolerated only if it does not interfere with productivity. The voice of Chris's dead mother cheering her on is not comforting, it is disciplinary. Even memory becomes instrumentalized, pushing her to run faster rather than allowing her to stop. The crystal externalizes a belief common in hyper-competitive environments, that success is a matter of visualization, mindset, and personal will. Structural pressures disappear, everything becomes a matter of belief. But the episode is clear that this logic is lethal. The crystal does not discriminate between deserved and undeserved harm. Once desire is detached from consequence, violence becomes frictionless. The episode ultimately critiques a culture that equates value with velocity and resilience with suppression. Grief is treated as weakness, rest as failure, and compassion as inefficiency. Under such conditions, violence doesn't appear as an anomaly, it is the logical endpoint. What begins as a race ends as a massacre of relationships. No one truly wins. The track empties, the trophies tarnish, and the system moves on, ready to crown the next runner until they fall too. Chris was played by Lori Petty, who is known for Free Willy and Point Break. Nickie was played by Yvette Napar, who was in 23 episodes of RoboCop as well as 21 Jump Street. David was played by Kane Picoy, and he's known for Beverly Hills 90210 as well as Tank Girl. Alan B. Urey wrote this one, and he wrote the Jigsaw Murders. Mick Garris directed this episode, and he's pretty famous. He's known for writing Hocus Pocus and 9 episodes of Amazing Stories. This episode was okay. I'll rate it a 7.5 out of 10 for Freddy's Nightmares. It was well thought out and nicely produced. What was your favorite episode of this show? Let me know down below, and remember to be well and stay spooky.